to discuss inclusive and equitable technology. Thanks for joining us today, Stephanie.
Thank you so much for having me. Welcome, everyone. My name is Stephanie Malmberg. I am the Assistant Dean for Distance Learning and Professional Development at SUNY Broome, and excited to talk to you today about inclusive and equitable technology. Next slide. So this presentation synthesizes findings from a recent publication sponsored by the Western Institute Commission on Higher Education's Cooperative for Educational Technologies, as well as the National Research for Distance Education and Technological Advancements. It also takes into consideration what we know to be true for SUNY students, gleaned from student satisfaction surveys and other illustrative data sets, and charts a path forward for creating inclusive and equitable classrooms that leverage technology and online learning in a way that can yield positive outcomes for students and the institutions that they attend. And so at the risk of sounding cliche, I believe that we are at a crossroads of many unique conditions that will shape the future of education for at least the rest of my career. And I likely have a solid 20, 25 years to go. From our country's most recent racial reckoning, with roots in the killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, to the changes brought about to the world as a result of a global pandemic, higher education occupies a unique position at the front lines of what we've known and what is to come. However, I don't think I'm saying anything controversial when I say that higher education can be slow to adapt to societal change. By the time we systematically react, the next normal is already ushering in. Now that we have all experienced the great pivot, what might we be able to take from our foray into online learning at scale, and how can we use the opportunity to create equity for all students in the online learning environment? Structurally, persistent achievement gaps and the decades of new student success initiatives designed to ameliorate them have been met with limited success. A critique is that they have been micro-level supports aimed at individuals, which rarely, if ever, consider the role of the educational structure as an active agent in producing the outcomes that frustrate us to no end. As indicated in the study, the support that we provide is more akin to a patch, while recognizing that larger systemic structures of racism need dismantling for equitable education to be the norm. We must challenge the system in order for us to create greater access to and equity among our institutions, programs, and courses. Change to end racism in education systems requires an acknowledgement, first and foremost, that racism exists. Finally, the role of language is important. Inequality in higher education is a structural problem that is hidden or revealed through the use of language imbued with political and social meaning, and our language needs updating. There isn't a minority student in the way that there once might have been. The reality is that the notion of minority is very complex, and the term should be reconsidered not only for the change in demographic composition of minority groups, but also because of the cognitive constructs and social implications that have developed regarding the term minority. This presentation and the research brief that we are highlighting refers to Black, African American, Hispanic, Latinx, Latino and Latina, Native of Indigenous American, including American Indian, Alaskan Native, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander as historically minoritized students as opposed to minority students. I want to acknowledge that students that identify as any of these races or ethnicities should not be viewed as a monolithic group. The term historically minoritized students is used to describe students in an aggregate, recognizing the limitations of language. And so broadly, the research brief and its systematic literature review of the mediating impacts of educational technologies on historically minoritized students found that these students indicated their desire for a curriculum that is more culturally inclusive and that provides opportunities for them to talk about themselves and their cultural backgrounds. This study offers introductory modules as a space for students to tell a story about themselves and about their culture. Students want a curriculum that is personalized and that allows them to bring in their own unique cultural perspectives to customize and complexify course material through the lens of their own lived experiences. The most prominent findings included an array of course characteristics, such as course modality, course level, course mode, and type of course. The research indicates that course modality, discipline, and level could influence student success outcomes. Under certain circumstances, historically minoritized students were more likely to succeed in blended and online courses than in their traditional face-to-face courses. Historically minoritized students were found to be successful in online and blended courses that were of a higher level, so think your junior and senior level courses, and that were specific to their major. Blended lower level courses, online upper level courses, and online courses within the major were all reported as demonstrating evidence of inclusive learning and student success. Course load was also found to be incredibly important as well. Research indicates that historically minoritized students are more likely to complete their degree if they are successful in online courses. Even high academic achievers with large course loads are found to be less likely to complete their online courses, which increases the likelihood of their dropping out. Historically minoritized students, and really all students, should not overload their courses, especially with enrollment in online courses. And so we have a question for the audience. And so Jamie can walk us through how to use the Mentee platform for those of you who weren't on the last call.
So you can either point your phone and have your camera open on the QR code there, or you can go to mentee.com and use the code 99098226. And I'll type that code into the chat.
And so what this question is asking you is to think about what are some technologies and best practices that you are using that can help us achieve outcomes aligned with the findings that I just reviewed. So here we see course design support for faculty, absolutely. And that is paramount. And I think we'll be talking a little bit more. This research brief did touch upon that quite a bit. When we see advise students into meaningful course loads, absolutely. We know our students balance quite a bit. And we also know that for many of our students, particularly those of us at community colleges, students are not only students. There are a number of roles that they take on each day. I'm sorry, it just went. More learning designers, absolutely. Asynchronous lectures for students who cannot do in-person or synchronous. So maybe something akin to our emerging HyFlex models. Flexible course modalities, absolutely. More diverse course modalities, absolutely. These are some really wonderful suggestions. It's going fast on my screen, I apologize. Discussion forums. In rethinking how the discussion forum functions, I've been really impressed by what I've learned about PackBack of late. Universal design for learning as a principle, absolutely. Okay, writing good learning objectives, absolutely, and then connecting them to the actual assessment that you're using to measure that learning, absolutely. All right, I think we can probably continue. So the research brief identified several instructional characteristics and interventions to improve instruction. Many of these are familiar to us within SUNY, and we have made strides to incorporate an array of best practices into our academic offerings, knowing that these can improve student success outcomes for all of our students, and particularly those that are historically minoritized. OER initiatives are a part of most of our campuses, and we have made a concerted effort to provide our students with affordable course content that is of the highest quality. Adaptive learning content. This is something that I'm really interested in, how our campuses are leveraging adaptive learning in their courses. Adaptive learning content is designed to dynamically adjust to the level or type of course content based on an individual student's abilities or skill attainment, and in many ways accelerate a learner's performance with both automated and instructor interventions. This type of customized learning experience addresses the unique needs of an individual through just-in-time feedback, pathways, and intuitive resources, which is more personalized as opposed to a one-size-fits-all approach. Course design, effective course design, and really leveraging the power of the learning management system to its full potential is key. Making sure that our online course content is accessible is paramount in the success of all of our students. Active learning as a pedagogy enhances student engagement and interactions with each other through the lens of the course material rather than focusing on lecture-based instruction. Active learning reinforces important material, concepts, and skills, and provides more frequent and immediate feedback to students, while also providing students with an opportunity to think about, talk about, and process course material through their unique cultural experiences. And interactions with peer and faculty should be substantive. The interaction that takes place should be collaborative. The research brief identifies that students want a more supportive online learning environment and interaction with their instructor and peers. Students prefer an education that is more reciprocal in nature, and they've expressed a desire to meet face-to-face with instructors and to have more quality discussions online rather than responding to questions in silos. Students also reported that they liked their online courses because of the non-prejudicial nature that provided a supportive and encouraging environment rather than competition among peers and the freedom to go at their own pace. And so we have another poll question. So what are some instructional technologies and technological best practices that you might be using? Let me put mine in the chat. And this is again another mentee opportunity to participate, or you can put it right in the chat. I love this modularizing learning content. I think that's what saved me when we moved fully online at the start of the pandemic, and really thinking about how to chunk things out meaningfully for students. Absolutely. Quality instructor videos, you know, piggybacking off of the conversation from our last presenter. Absolutely. That's something I made some notes. I want to revisit a lot of what I have out there right now as a result of our last hour. Using free technology and providing tutorials. Absolutely. Absolutely. The less prohibitive, the fewer barriers, the better for our students. Making the textbook optional and providing free learning content. OER is really changing the landscape and really increasing the potential for equity in our courses. Raise your hand forums, peer reviews, and discussion boards that include both peers and instructor input. Absolutely. Increased opportunities and avenues to talk with the instructor. So it's interesting because a lot of what I've been thinking about is how we have previously conceptualized online learning. And, you know, for me, online learning was, you know, paramount and completely aligned with asynchronous instruction, right? I spent all day Sunday getting everything ready for Monday's module, and that was how it worked. And now really the possibilities are endless. And while I'm teaching online this summer, I'm meeting with my students in a remote synchronous environment because that's what they told me they needed, right? Whether they said that to me directly or I could identify that through their success or lack thereof in some instances. Become aware of what we need to look for to ensure that the tools we use are accessible. Absolutely. There's a huge push on our campus right now for accessibility of all of our course content. Manage expectations of student work. Some may not have webcams or high-speed internet. Absolutely. Making instructional decisions from a student-centered approach, not from a what works for me approach. Absolutely. That's wonderful.
There's something to be said for doing a survey of your students that's, anonymous, that allows you to get a sense of what access to technology your students have at the beginning of any semester. It's going to change from semester to semester, right? And just understanding how many of them have broadband, how many don't, how many have a webcam, how many don't. And that can maybe change some of your expectations for that course overall, maybe change some of your assignments, et cetera, being flexible based on what your students have access to.
And in the chat, there's one that says, establish a tone that you are here to help them achieve the course goals. Just
Mhm.
being able to be approachable and saying to folks, I'm here to help. There are some things I've already been able to predict through teaching courses and working directly with students for a number of years. And then there are those other things that are unique to you that I'll need you to clue me in on as we progress. But letting them know that you're there to support their success is it does wonders for their performance and what they think that they're capable of. Thank you. These are really great responses. So student characteristics that influence historically minoritized student success online outcomes. The research brief indicated student level characteristics that influence their outcomes. Technology access and experiences varied. And while we might think that all students are digital natives, research shows that not all students have had the same access to technology or possess the same technological capacities. At the close of the spring 2020 semester, SUNY asked its students to provide feedback regarding their online experiences across the system. We know that many of our students left campus and returned home to environments that were not conducive to online learning, where they may share a device with siblings, where they may be limited or unreliable internet access. SUNY mobilized to provide hardware and connectivity to students as a result of the pivot to online. However, these issues are present even without a pandemic. Our students, and often our historically minoritized students, often find themselves at a technological disadvantage when compared to their peers. There are interventions that can improve student readiness for technology use. The research brief indicates that historically minoritized students could benefit from interventions to prepare them for online learning. These can be implemented by faculty, by programs and institutions to prepare students and create equitable experiences for their success. Online summer preparation courses that use adaptive learning may help students perform better than students who take a remedial course. Online summer interventions can provide students with technology and study skills while also providing critical foundational instruction to limit the need for academic remediation. The research indicates that students who have to take even one remedial course are less likely to complete their degree. And across SUNY, we've all made significant efforts to reduce or eliminate remedial courses in favor of co-requisite models that provide students with additional support while also earning them credit toward their degree. And so we have another mentee poll. And so we want to know from you what has helped students become more proficient in their online courses. I love that, low stake practice assignments. I always have the first discussion board as tell me about yourself, and it's ungraded and it just gives you some familiarity with how things are designed for the course. Clear and simple design, well-designed instructional sites, good and proactive interaction with the instructor. These are all great. Orientation videos and help documents. For the last 2 semesters, I have a syllabus video, and I'm going to do one even when we're back in person, just having those resources available for students. Choice in how students can complete assignments. That sounds really interesting. I'd love to know more about that. Gradual and progressive introduction to technologies. LMS orientation from the campus. Using a standard getting started section in the LMS on the tech they will use. All of these sound really possible, doable, and really supportive. Regular and consistent communication and reminders. Yes, absolutely. I appreciate Maureen's comments. Students are very good with apps on phones, but in general computer skills, not so much. That certainly is what I've found. And at a community college where a fair number of our students are also returning students, or they're post-traditional students who don't have the experience with computers, it certainly presents a challenge. Pop in office hours for edits and questions right before an assignment is due. I love that. That's a wonderful idea. Alternative assessments that have them apply the theories and techniques studied in the course. So I love these. I want to know more about them, just because one of the things that I'm thinking about is moving away from the test. The test doesn't measure what I want it to measure. So I'm sure that there are better assessments that I can employ that will better connect the learning outcomes with what students are able to demonstrate. Any others? Let me check the chat. Opening courses early and letting students know what the requirements and course schedule are. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I think we can cover our last slides. We have a few more questions for you, I believe.
And you might not have an answer to this question, right? This might not be something we've thought about specifically yet. We've thought about doing these things for all students, but we haven't said, what can we do to support this group of students that needs it? So it might not be something you have done, but something that you might do.
I know in my practice, one of the things that has been really important is to provide students with an opportunity to complexify the material that they're learning through their own lived experiences. And so in the discussion board platform, I asked them to find me something, whether it be a TikTok video or a popular article that they've read, or something along those lines that really drives the point home of the whatever we might be studying at that time through what they've already experienced. And with all of us having access to it, it really gives us a more broad understanding of what these concepts look like in practice. And I teach human development, so it is a little bit different. I don't think that every discipline avails itself to this model, but it really has shown us a lot that we wouldn't have had access to otherwise. So I love some of these. Provide examples that are not triggering. That is definitely a fine line. Lending textbooks that could teach them material if they have network access issues. Set up Slack with Q&A channels and allow students to connect. Expand content to include more representative examples. Absolutely. When using images, choose a variety of people of different races. Absolutely. Essays, stories, and poems written by historically minoritized groups. I love that. I like the idea of using a form to ask students how they learn best and what strengths they bring to group work. I'll write that one down. Create balance groups with a logarithm to make sure that groupings are more diverse based on a variety of metrics. So one of the things I've been doing for a long time is asking students what their career goals are, and then a social justice issue that um, y- they're passionate about, and use that so that folks can think through concepts that they're all already thinking about, but through their own individualized experiences. And then that brings a lot of really positive and growth oriented group dynamics to the classroom. Application based discussions in STEM using images and presenters that look like them. Absolutely, so important. Well, these are really great suggestions. We have another one. Teach in multiple modalities and allow for multiple measures of assessments: verbal, visual, auditory. Call attention to shortcomings and or racism found within your discipline. Absolutely. I think that for some of us that there's a comfort issue there, and we want to do it the right way. We want to have these conversations, and we also don't want to have it at the expense of our historically minoritized students in our classrooms. And so it's incredibly important for us as the faculty member to really facilitate those discussions in a way that the emotional labor falls on us and not our minoritized students in our classrooms. Okay. So there are a couple of things that I want us to think about, particularly as we increase opportunities and make some changes to support historically minoritized students on our campus. Better data can often tell us a much more comprehensive story. So one of the arguments that the research brief makes is that often historically minoritized students are treated as a monolith. Moreover, even when we look at student success data by race and ethnicity, rarely do we identify other characteristics that are critical to student success, including gender, age, socioeconomic status, and permutations of these characteristics. Many of us will report the experiences of Black students, but are we reporting on the experiences of Black males ages 18 to 22 that are not Pell eligible, or Asian female students that are Pell eligible? Are there important differences and distinctions that can be identified and addressed if our data were more precise and intersectional? What kind of stories might we be able to tell about our students, and how might our interventions become more focused and specific as a result? The other is that there are deficit frameworks everywhere. And so a critique of the literature found in this research brief is that it mostly presented students of color, historically minoritized students, through a deficit framework. An opportunity for us to consider is how we might test and measure the positive effects of a diverse online classroom environment, as well as how we might solicit feedback from historically minoritized students in the decision-making process regarding the use of teaching technologies. These strengths-based approaches focus on what students already know and can do, and then build from there. The anti-deficit achievement framework is an approach to understanding achievement developed from theories in education, sociology, psychology, gender studies, and education, used to better understand Black male success in college. And then strengths-based and anti-deficit achievement frameworks can be employed in order to better understand the experiences of all historically minoritized students that attend our colleges. And so our next question is, how do we leverage the strengths of our minority students, of our historically minoritized students, and how do the strengths they bring allow for a more critical and inclusive classroom? So I love these. Diversify the curriculum. I think we talked a little bit about that in our last question. Provide a worldview that is culturally informed. Absolutely, that is a strength. And something to remember that we all bring that, but that not everybody's cultural worldviews are as valued as others. Maintain rigor for all, high expectations. Absolutely. Have the courage to ask the difficult questions and be willing to truly listen to the answers. Right. And that's decentering ourselves and decentering our cultural ways of knowing in favor of a more equitable experience. Allows for more valuable discussions given various perspectives. Absolutely. Articulate their own narratives and validate them. I love that. Ask students for feedback during the design process. That I think is key, right? A lot of what we're talking about is after the fact, but getting that feedback while we're developing our courses, our curriculum, the use of technology, all of that is important to have some student feedback. Provide a means for anonymous feedback, especially early in the course. I love that. That's great. Stay relevant and up to date with research and data, and pop cultural references help. Is anybody else realizing their pop culture references are a little dated? I really have to, yeah, same. I really have to be a little bit better about that. So one of the ways, and I think I mentioned this when we were talking about our last question, when I asked students to find what these concepts look like in their world and then show it to me, that really did extend my own, I would say, not my own relevance necessarily, but my own understanding of what is current and, dare I say, hip. I'm sure my kids, if they heard me, they'd be laughing right now. They know I'm not hip. These are all wonderful responses. Paula, hip is a mindset. I'll take that. Highlight minority-owned businesses and vendors or products or research. So that was a challenge I had for myself not that long ago. I went through a lot of the outside of the textbook readings that I assign my peer-reviewed research articles, and I made it a point to highlight as many Black women scholars as I could. Yeah, these are wonderful. Great ideas. Rename courses to include that cultural references aren't just for minoritized people. Absolutely. I think we forget about our own cultural references, and it is a struggle to decenter ourselves. It's a necessary struggle, and it's one that is important to take on. I love the chat. Okay. And so in addition to understanding student needs, interventions should be implemented to address any potential gaps in a student's distance learning environment, along with their technology access and use. Students should be provided with an online readiness opportunity to gain behaviors, attitudes, and beliefs that will prepare them for success in their online courses. Curriculum for experiences with online learning readiness should include opportunities for students to self-direct their learning, communicate effectively online, use different technologies effectively for communication and productivity, organize time in classroom activities intentionally, and to develop the belief that online learning is as effective as face-to-face instruction. And so how are we onboarding students at a campus level and a course level to the technological platforms so that students can be successful? Require students to complete an LMS tutorial online readiness module within the LMS. I like to remind students you can't break it. Communicate early and often to make sure students know where to log in, what to do, how to email, etc. Emailing students, asking them to email you back. Provide clear instructions for all technologies and how students can get help. Somebody indicated that they aren't, but they should be. So I'm wondering, is this at the institution level? Do programs have a role in this? I know that a lot of us individually do what we know we should do to the best of our capacity, but is there a more organized effort on your campuses? Starfish and student support. Not sure we are all in all cases, but we do include course tours and welcome videos and syllabus quizzes. Okay. Course orientation module and how to video, how to be successful in online classes. Students don't want to do it if it's voluntary. Okay. Offer a complimentary video conferencing during go live period and call if they have not onboarded themselves. Okay. Standardized hardware and software minimums. Oh, Chelsea brings up a wonderful point. Try to use the same applications across campus so students don't have to learn multiple systems. I think that is definitely key. The campus should be supporting what everybody's using. Any other suggestions? Anything I missed? Are you ready to Zoom? I love that. Synchronous meet and greet during week 2 to see if students have questions. Yeah, that really does create that connection that students have indicated that they're looking for. Yeah, I would like to agree with Jamie. The Are You Ready to Zoom module sounds really interesting. Okay, thank you. And then one of the really important findings of this article was advising for effective enrollment strategies. So there is a significant opportunity for campuses to be strategic with their course schedules in light of this research, so that they are offering courses and creating degree plans for students to follow that maximizes their success across all modalities. Students should be advised as to effective enrollment strategies when taking online courses, and should be advised to avoid taking too large of a course load, taking online courses that are specific to their degree program, and they should take blended entry-level courses with intentionally designed structures. Intentionally designed courses have a deliberate course design that is anchored in evidence-based research and sound practices. So I think we might have one more question. Yes, we do. How do we develop intentional course scheduling practices across all modalities to create the conditions for such success? I know on our campus, we don't really plan that far in advance. We're not making next year's schedule now, but if we were able to market that to students so that they could see what that would look like, what modality, and making sure that we know what modalities students need what courses in, but that's really difficult to do right now. I don't know if there are and if there are any faculty members from schools that have pathways, guided pathways, because I know that there are some schools that are guided pathways schools that do try to do this.
This is a challenging question to answer.
So we do have one. It's offer different modalities for courses that will have multiple sections. I think that that's critical. Maybe this is old school, but I'm of the mindset that if we can have two sections of everything, have one in person or have one high flex maybe, then we can meet the needs of all students.
Jean has shared in the chat that she'd be happy to share the are you ready for Zoom?
Thank you. I appreciate that. Advising for 2 semesters instead of 1. I know on our campus right now, we're really looking at the advising process, and that is something that's come up in some of our meetings. For other conversations, working with a professional advisor for that first year, and then working with your faculty advisor for that more nuanced, more detailed, more career specific academic advising as well. Enrollment is an issue. Yes, enrollment is an issue. Understood. It's really hard to be predictive right now when there's so much up in the air, so much uncertainty. Maureen put in the chat, our college used to have weekend college, providing course sequences on weekends and evenings. They don't do that anymore, but it did help working parents. I'm hoping that something like High Flex might be able to meet the needs of a lot of our working parents. We are a new High Flex school. We will have 7 High Flex courses offered next semester. We're really excited about it.
Stephanie, are those true High Flex classes where the students have the ability to choose between all 3 modalities?
Yes, they are. So we've been working with faculty in a pilot cohort to first develop the asynchronous piece if it wasn't fully developed, and then work with them on the technological aspect for the in-person, the traditional face-to-face, and then the remote synchronous that they'll be doing. We've outfitted some classrooms and we created a High Flex sandbox for faculty to go in and just play around. You can't break anything. And to try to get some comfort with the technology. And our hope is that this inaugural cohort will help us build campus momentum.
That's great. Actually, you beat me to the point I was about to type in. We need to learn how to more fully embrace High Flex and figure out ways to make it easier for the faculty to implement. It's a great concept, but it's still a little bit difficult. It's more difficult. So.
It is more difficult. I absolutely have to agree. I'm fortunate that the faculty who volunteered for our pilot cohort really embraced that. And they were also asynchronous power users already. So that piece of the puzzle has already been solved. It's really becoming comfortable and familiar with leveraging the technology in the remote synchronous and traditional face-to-face. There's a question in the chat. We are attempting High Flex, but the tech is a bit difficult. Yeah, agreed. We are definitely working through challenges this summer so that when we launch in fall, we're ready to go. And there's a question. I'm sorry, I just missed it. It went fast. Will the remote synchronous be the same time as the in-person? It will be the same time. It'll be the exact same class. So it'll be one section and students will have the ability to choose how they will be attending for that day, whether they go in person, whether they from home, or whether they choose to participate in the asynchronous.
I like your strategy also about trying to find the power users of asynchronous and getting them to move into HighFlex. That's a great idea that didn't cross my mind until you said it.
I think our logic was knowing that if we didn't have that hurdle, because teaching online is hard. Remote, like, any way you do it, it's not necessarily easy. And having a well-designed asynchronous course for students to access, we thought if we could meet that challenge, then the rest would be more of the creative work. There's a comment, part of getting faculty buy-in is a question of support and reducing their load. Those adopting it need compensating for the labor to get it working. We were able to identify some grant funds on our campus for faculty participating because of a lack of travel this academic year. There was some money for us to re-envision and repurpose, but we know that not all campuses are in that position. It is also important to develop the online course fully as described and continue from there. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's me. So if you wanted to email me about anything, that's how you would contact me. Jamie, she'll be here all week. You know how to get Jamie.
I'll be here all week.
She'll be here all week. Does anybody have any questions?
Oh, we do actually have Jean is willing to share the screen for her ready to Zoom. So I'm going to stop share right now. And I'm going to, hang on, I got to find you, Jean, and make you co-host so you can share if you'd like and show us that, are you ready to Zoom? Thanks for doing that. I appreciate it.
I had to unmute too. Sorry about that, guys. So I built this is in Blackboard. So I built this section called Getting Started, and this is standardized for all the classes that I build for the School of Management. And what we found early on was that Zoom, they had to be updated or the advanced features of Zoom weren't available for the faculty. And that's really frustrating if you've got people on different versions and you're trying to do different things in Zoom. So the first was the standardized section on technology setup. And I even, put a link to the browser checker and things like that, because they need to log into Zoom, log into Panopto, make sure that they're all on the standardized tech tools. But in the Getting Ready to Zoom module, I just did a couple of screenshots here and, sort of guiding them through how do you know if you're updated. So first of all, they need, to go to the desktop client, which is a concept that even faculty struggled with in the beginning, if anyone remembers that. And making sure that they know what's the current version and making sure that they authenticate within, our buffalozoom.us, because a lot of people just went to zoom.us and that didn't give them all of the features. And so I kind of walked them through, and then at the bottom, we just put during the Zoom, some little things to remember, like, try to, adjust your audio camera, dress appropriately, try not to eat or drink, which I have to admit I've been guilty of on a 3-hour night class. But anyways, that's pretty much what it looks like. And I hope that's kind of what you were looking for.
Yes, thanks for sharing. It's always helpful
Okay.
to see what other people are doing.
Happy if anyone wants to contact me, I'm happy to show more. So
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or thoughts?
Is anybody doing any kind of questionnaires or surveys to their students about what kind of technology they have access to, or comfort or experience with technology? Is anybody doing anything like that? Or not? I know I'm not, so I didn't know if anybody else was. Okay. That's good to know, Paula. Paula indicated that students were saying that their comfort level was high. We did in my class, this was the first time we required students to go through the learning management system orientation, and they had to take certain quizzes, like how do you submit a discussion post, how do you reply, how do you submit as an assignment, etc. And I think it made a difference for 3 or 4 of my students who were non-traditional. Huge difference, in fact. And one of my students actually expressly thanked me for forcing him to go through the course. So I think that was helpful. Good, Nicole. All right. Well, if we don't have any more comments or questions, I want to thank Stephanie for this presentation, for pulling this together. And I want to thank everybody for being with us all day today. I know that it's, well, maybe a little too hot to be outside, but at least it's sunny and beautiful and we're all sitting inside. I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow morning. We start bright and early at 10 o'clock again, and we'll have another round of trivia questions for this cute little SUNY blue otter. All right, everyone, have a great evening. Stay cool, and I'll see you soon. Thanks, Stephanie.